We've arranged a society based on science and technology in which nobody understands anything about science and technology. And this combustible mixture of ignorance and power, sooner or later, is going to blow up in our faces.
Okay, everyone. Welcome to episode number 3 of the Red Line Express. The first thing that you'll notice if you are joining me from the first 2 episodes is, well, I don't sound like shit. That was the biggest feedback I got from friends and family. It was, Brian, the content's kind of interesting, but you sound like shit. So we worked on that. I like where it is now. I think it sounds, I don't know, maybe I could do ASMR. Maybe I could kiss the camera. Anyways, I'm happy with the sound. The other bit of feedback was on the lighting. And, well, I thought it was kind of cool or kind of like, edgy. But it's just kind of fucking creepy. So we stopped that. We're going to use just normal lighting now. We got a nice little light over here. Yeah, it looks good. Anyways, so this is episode number 3 of the Red Line Express, and today I want to talk a little bit about astrology, because, well, Dr.Oz is now going to be deciding really important things, and Dr.Oz is a lover of astrology, and I think that's just fucking great. Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's really important to say that I'm someone who really loves science. I mentioned it in my first video, but my background is in applied environmental science. I've worked for like 6-7 years in procurement, which I consider to be a pretty analytical field. But I like science, and I think that's really important. It's from my background. I used to read sci-fi books, War of the Worlds, Time Machine, Isaac Asimov, right? But the one that's really important for today's discussion is Carl Sagan, right? The demon-haunted world. I think right now Carl Sagan's message is especially important for a lot of people in terms of what has gone wrong, what might the, remedy be to what is going wrong. But yeah, look, if you don't know who Carl Sagan is, I should say, Carl Sagan was a fantastic science communicator, really popular, I think, more around the 1991 period. This book published in 1995. The idea of the book is that it talks about, the power of critical thinking and the importance especially of that critical thinking, as we become more technologically advanced and we're exposed to more things that are just generally not true, right? I could just read the back of the book where it says, I'm going to try use his voice a little bit, but I might fail completely. But anyways, how can we make intelligent decisions about our increasingly technologically driven lives if we don't understand the difference between the myths of pseudoscience, New Age thinking, and fundamentalist zealotry, and the testable hypothesis of science?
I mean, who is running the science and technology in a democracy if the people don't know anything about it?
I might have lost a whole bunch of you already, but basically, that's a way of saying, how the fuck do you know what's true if you're not able to tell bullshit from fact or whatever, right? Like, if anyone who doesn't know, pseudoscience is basically fake science. Pseudoscience, fake science, right? And I think it's really important here that we're talking about things that are testable. We're talking about things that cause and effect, right? And astrology is one of those things that falls into that whole pseudoscience, New Age thinking, where, look, it's not wrong to think differently, but if what you're thinking and if what you're saying is testably nonsense, you gotta move on. And I think, that is one of the things about the book is, how do you test an idea? How do you recognize when an idea presented to you is nonsense? And again, it's a skill that needs to be learned. And I think that the fact that we are where we are is a sign that the public at large is missing that skill. I don't think it matters what field you're in. Having critical thinking skills is beneficial whether you're in marketing, whether you're in sales, I can give like a really good example straight out of this book here. You know, chapter 6, where they talk about hallucinations, which basically just means bullshit lies, right? And this is the context about advertisers, and it's about advertisers knowing their audience, right? So it's advertisers must know their audiences. It's a simple matter of product and corporate survival. So we can learn how commercial free enterprise America views UFO buffs by examining the advertisements in magazines devoted to UFOs. Here are some entirely typical ad headlines from an issue of UFO Universe. And just to quickly explain what that whole paragraph means, he's saying that in order for advertisers to survive in this competitive corporate environment, they have to know their audience, and they have to know that what they say is going to resonate with the people that they're trying to grasp, right? And so by looking at how they position their ads back in the time, it gives you an idea of how they think of their audience, right? So let's look at some of these ads from back in the day and see if things have changed that much, right? Oh boy. Senior research scientist discovers 2,000-year-old secret to wealth, power, and romantic love. Classified above top secret, the most sensational government conspiracy of our time is finally revealed to the world by a retired military officer. I got a girl. Do you? Stop missing out. Get girls now. Amazing psychic research breakthrough. It only takes 5 minutes to prove that psychic magic powers really work. Increase the power of gemstones, charms, seals, and symbols. Improve the effectiveness of everything you do. Magnify your mind power and abilities with the Mind Power Magnifier. Yeah. 1995, just as relevant today. But one of the topics that he goes into this book is how people who are communicating science, you know, it's not necessarily that they're communicating against people knowing the science or not. You know, there's a bit of an attention economy topic going on in here, right? Where your real combatant is the false nonsense that gets put out there, right? And when there is so much false nonsense out there, when the public themselves are not able to critically assess and critically say that, hey, that's just fucking nonsense, it leaves room for bad actors to take advantage of that void.
And the second reason that I'm worried about this is that science is more than a body of knowledge. It's a way of thinking, a way of skeptically interrogating the universe with a fine understanding of human fallibility. If we are not able to ask skeptical questions, to interrogate those who tell us that something is true, to be skeptical of those in authority, then we're up for grabs for the next charlatan, political or religious, who comes ambling along.
So anyways, you know, that's a bit of Demon Haunted World. Back to the topic of astrology. I think it's just so goddamn interesting because I do think that the tolerance of astrology is the starting point for a lot of the nonsense that we're seeing today, right? And it's very unfortunate, I gotta say it, you know, astrology, homeopathy, those kind of topics, they're more favored by people on, you know, the left or people with progressive ideas, right? And unfortunately, people on the left or people with progressive ideas, you know, they have tolerance as a bit of a... They are so tolerant that sometimes it can be a detriment, okay? And yes, I think in this case, being tolerant of things like astrology or people with those beliefs, you know, it left room for a bunch of other nonsense in terms of anti-vax and everything else that we're now. Look, I don't know the proper segue or the proper direction where I want to really take this, but it's just mind-boggling to me because... Holy shit, what have we done? Here's the thing. I can't spend this whole video debunking astrology. I just do not have the time for it. There's some really great resources that you can look at though, including some Carl Sagan links that I'll include in the video. You know, you might have seen some clips in this video as I edit it as I go on, you know, but the fact that astrology made its way through into a progressive space, and that is the space of progressive liberal women. You know, if you were to go on a dating app today, astrology is front and center. It's treated like it's treated like a real thing, and it's just not. I'm sorry. You know, and the unfortunate thing there is that it removes a lot of serious people from wanting to be in those spaces with you. You know, it provides such an easy target for political opponents to point at and say, hey, they believe in complete total nonsense, so what they're saying about us, like, why should you believe it, you know? And they have a point. You know, you don't get RFK in the White House, you don't get Dr.Oz in the White House in a world where people know how to critically assess that astrology is nonsense, okay? No, that's not blaming women. That's not blaming people who believe in astrology for what's going on right now. But it's an example of just how severe the issue is. It's an example of the lack of serious discussion that we're able to have when these things exist, right? And it's mind-blowing to me. I mean, I'm sorry. It's just like, trying to talk to someone who seriously believes in astrology is like trying to talk to someone who doesn't believe in climate change. It's just as difficult and it makes just as little sense. And then here's the thing. From the outside perspective, as in someone who doesn't claim to be liberal or conservative or whatever other label that you might have, when they see two groups who accept whether it's anti-vaccine or whether it's astrology, homeopathy, they see two groups that they can't be a part of. They see two groups that just make no sense either way. And I think that's part of a problem of where we are at. Now, it's easy to say that this is just overblown, right? And picking on astrology is really, it's not fair. You're picking on something that women like. But the reality is astrology, anti-vaccine, climate denial, those are all part of the exact same thing. And in the same way that those three things are part of the same overall body of problems, the lack of critical thinking, the fact that it's not demarcated on like a particular political line, it shows that it's not an issue with one specific party. It's an issue with education altogether. It's an issue that exists not only in the United States, but it's one that exists in Canada as well, because Canada has some of the same exact issues as what's going on in the States right now, including the tolerance of things that just don't make any sense to be tolerant of. And someone could watch this video who knows me, and they could tell me, Brian, you might fall in line with some of those things yourself. And like, yeah, I know that, but hopefully we can have a discussion about what that is, But the fact of the matter is, when you walk into a room and you see people arguing about things and they are talking about astrology, they're talking about anti-vaccine, they're talking about climate change denial, I don't care which political party they're part of. In both cases, I see people who I just can't associate with. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people out there who feel the exact same way. They see the extremes on both sides, and it makes them think like they're crazy. It makes them think like there's no party that I can be a part of. A lot of that can be part of the, the echo chamber problem, And I wish I could say it would get better, but I think from what I've seen in just the past 2 weeks is a disappointing trend. It's a disappointing trend from people I would consider allies on the left-leaning side, where they want to double down on failed tactics, where they want to abandon spaces like Twitter, which, FYI guys, abandoning it after you lost the election, it's not that useful, okay? So they're abandoning Twitter, and I'm not calling it X because that's a stupid fucking name. They're talking on LinkedIn about, they're white people, and they're doubling down on divisive tactics. They're doubling down on moving away to spaces where other people can't see what they're talking about, which is desperately needed. Like, people who are not into climate, people who are not into diversity, people who are not into all of these things, They need to see your discussions. They need to be able to engage with it, and you need to be able to engage with them, right? And the idea that, I mean, I don't know what to tell you, you know, think of it in like in like a sports game, you know, or football, whatever. I don't play that many sports, but like I'll play chess, right? I used to be a really good chess player in Jamaica. And by really good, I mean fucking Jamaica, and I played chess. Like, you're bound to do well if you study a little bit. No offense, Jamaica. But yeah, like, I played chess. And if I played against a particular opponent and my strategy was losing repeatedly, and I was playing worse each time, and my points and the spread of score was widening, saying that, hey, like, what I'm doing is not working. It's a failed strategy to double down, right? You know, and if I were to double down on a failed strategy and my opponent were to see that, they think they just hit the jackpot, you know? It's like they'd have a conversation with themselves and they'd say, whoa, they're not going to change a goddamn thing. Nice. And yeah, like, you're going to do the exact same thing that caused you to lose before. You're going to lose again, and it's going to be worse next time. And so part of that problem is assuming that your side is the side of logical thinking, when it's just not. You know, when you allow tolerance of illogical things, you provide an avenue for the other side to take your followers or to take the people who would be part of your party. Because I'm just going to say this. I fully believe that there are people who did or would have voted for Kamala who are ecstatic that Dr. Oz is part of this administration. You know, they see someone who's like, wow, that person believed in astrology. Maybe they're going to represent me, you know? And that has been a strategy that I see the Trump team has been doing very well, you know, especially I think with Dr. Oz. You know, Dr. Oz is one of those people who has... he has a personality that has been heavily influenced by mainstream liberal media, whether it's CNN, whether it's Oprah.
And Cooper points out Dr. Oz has a long history of medical quackery. I wonder how people got the idea that he was a serious medical expert in the first place.
The first vaccines against the H1N1 virus are being distributed. Are they safe? We'll let you ask the expert, Dr. Mehmet Oz, host of the Dr. Oz Show.
The threat from drug-resistant bacteria. And out front tonight, we're lucky to have Dr. Oz, host of the Dr. Oz Show.
We are back with the great Dr. Oz and talking about a very critical thing for our audience about finding a woman's G-spot.
And that is something a lot of people are going to remember. And a lot of people are going to appreciate that someone who believes in astrology is in the White House. And unfortunately, a lot of this it's going to make it harder to fix what's going to come, especially if they disband the Department of Education. I mean, you're going to need this candle in the dark, okay? Because it's going to be the fucking Dark Ages.
It's a thing that Jefferson laid great stress on. It wasn't enough, he said, to enshrine some rights in a Constitution or a Bill of Rights. The people had to be educated, and they had to practice their skepticism and their education. Otherwise, we don't run the government. The government runs us.